Cyclists are a very vulnerable road user group, so the police argument is that they need to look after them. The police are 8 months into Operation Velo, and it's targeting all dangerous road users. But earlier on today, I caught up with Sergeant Ian Manley of Cambridgeshire Police, who told me more about this operation.
So Operation Velo is the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire's response to close passing or dangerous passing of pedal cyclists across our three-force area. But along with looking at the manner in which a pedal cyclist is passed, we're also looking at other offences that we can observe whilst we've got an officer on a pedal cycle. So we're looking at drivers using their mobile phones, not wearing their seatbelts. We've also been able to formulate whether somebody is intoxicated or whether they're driving at excess speed through the manner of their driving. But aside from that, we're looking at the cyclists themselves and whether they're putting themselves at risk through the manner of their cycling.
That's an important expression, isn't it? Putting themselves at risk. What did you find?
You look at pedal cycling as a whole, they're the second highest group of road users to be involved in a fatal collision, so that they are a vulnerable road user. But what we're finding is that they're not adhering to the legislation that applies to them in the Road Traffic Act. So complying with red traffic lights. We're using lights during hours of darkness. These are the main offences that we're looking at, which contribute to their own involvement in collisions. They're putting themselves at risk by going through red traffic lights. They're also putting themselves at risk by not wearing lights. And what we're looking to do is reduce their vulnerability by encouraging them to look after themselves. I know that people will say that there's a disproportionate fine levied against car drivers, but when you get inside a car, you have to pass a test in order to drive that large lump of metal around. There is no test for pedal cyclists, which it's not something that we can directly influence as police officers. That's something that needs to come further up from government. But there should be a larger levy against people who are putting themselves at risk. At the depths of winter, it'll be 3:30 in the afternoon when it's dark. And you look at it today, the visibility is greatly reduced by that low-lying fog and mist. If you are riding in dark clothing and you have no lights on during the hours of darkness, there is a stronger likelihood of you being struck by another motorist because they physically cannot see you.
There's always a significant number of people who say, why are you picking on us? It's the cars that are killing the cyclists, not the other way round.
I don't disagree. We meet with cycling campaign groups on a regular basis. We interact with them. Mill Road was actually highlighted to us by a cycling campaign group as being an area of concern for themselves about how cyclists were being passed or being put at risk. So we've been to an area where they considered it to be dangerous. We've looked at it, and cyclists are contributing to that danger. I'm a cyclist myself. The amount of reinvestment from cycling that is put back into the economy is huge. It's a fantastic way of increasing your cardiovascular health, improving your age likelihood. So I can't undermine the physical benefits that it provides with people, but you need to be looking after yourself. You are going to suffer serious injuries if you don't look after yourself and you don't adhere to the legislation that applies to you.
What's the punishment for the cyclists who've jumped the red lights on their mobile phones or who are riding without lights? What can you do to them?
So within Cambridgeshire, just looking at the lighting offences, within Cambridgeshire we have the lit scheme. So what we're looking at is encouraging people to get lights rather than imposing a fine on them. However, if you don't get those lights, then we will impose a fine on you.
How much is the fine?
It's £30.
Okay.
And it's the same again for failing to adhere to a red traffic light. With mobile phone offences, you can look at being prosecuted for careless and inconsiderate cycling. But again, there's a disproportionate fine levied against motorists with this. So a motorist who's caught on his mobile phone can expect to have £200 and 6 points on his licence, which is a greater fine. But he is driving that driver is in a larger vehicle, which has a massive injury potential.
So what do you say to those who say you're unfairly picking on the cyclists and actually should be concentrating more on the car drivers and lorry drivers for that matter?
We're looking at all user groups. We're looking at all motorists on the road. But what I'd say is that if you are jumping red lights, if you are texting or using your phone whilst you're cycling, if you're riding without any hands, you are more likely to be involved in a collision because you are putting yourself at risk.
Ian Manley, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Sergeant Ian Manley of Cambridgeshire Police talking about Operation Velo.